France and England, later Britain, have not had the best relationship. In the 500 years before the end of Napoleon, the two have been at war for 164 of them, and the rest of them they spent not exactly being keen on one another. Yet, throughout the last 700 years there have been numerous attempts to unify the two entities. But how close did they come to fruition? Did Britain and France almost become one country? Now, the first time that there was any real chance of unification was at the height of the 100 Years' War, when England, with the help of Burgundy, had won numerous victories. Their success peaked in 1422, when the child King Henry VI was crowned King Henry II of France. Now, Henry didn't control all of France, and with the help of a certain Joan of Arc, France won the 100 Years' War and the English were pushed out. King George III was the last British monarch to formally claim the French throne, since he renounced his claim in 1801 when Great Britain was merged with Ireland. So it was in 1940 that the most famous attempt to unify the two came about. This happened after the Allied front line collapsed and France was on the brink of being conquered by Germany. Naturally, everyone was panicking, and so the British made a proposal. Both nations and their empire should unify into a single entity, the Franco-British Union. A new constitution was going to be drafted, which would unite some of the organs of government. Defence and foreign policy would be conducted from London, the nation's new capital, whereas the new nation's finances would be administered from French territory. What was left of it, that is. The British and French parliaments would, as a stopgap, have to both pass the same legislation for it to come into effect until they were merged. The positions of each of the head of state would be extended to the other, meaning France would have a king again and Britain would have a president. Beyond this, there weren't many concrete plans because everyone was panicking about the war and France surrendering. Also, as a side note, it was expected that the other states that had fallen to Germany would also join this union too, so it wouldn't be France and Britain for long. In the end, these proposals never went anywhere because whilst prominent politicians on both sides favoured the union, many Frenchmen didn't want to sign their country's existence away. Many of them felt that they were being forced to choose between military submission to Germany or political and economic submission to Britain, and they chose the former. The next and final time many politicians attempted to merge the two nations was in 1956. After the Suez Crisis, which saw Britain, France and Israel invade Egypt to prevent it from seizing the Suez Canal, was an absolute failure, the two powers became desperate. It was an international embarrassment, and it looked clear to both that they were now firmly junior partners to the USA. If they were to protect their crumbling empires, something would need to be done. As such, Guy Mollet, the French Prime Minister, proposed the Franco-British Union to the British Prime Minister Harold Macmillan. The plan was that both would unite into a single nation, with Queen Elizabeth II taking the title Queen of France. This government would be devolved, and both would maintain separate budgets, but their armed forces and empires would be merged. And it was hoped that the two combined would act as a third pillar in the Cold War. This time, discussions didn't go very far. Macmillan said no. And the reason was that there was literally a 0% chance that the British or French publics would have gone along with this. Macmillan was personally against the Union and preferred for a new European Economic Union to counterbalance the USSR and the USA, which did happen and to which Britain wasn't invited. After this, both nations would remain separate and the Franco-British Union would go down as a curious idea brought up when both nations faced a crisis. I hope you enjoyed this episode and thank you for watching, with a special thanks to my patrons James Bisonet, John Lucid, A Man of Culture, Danny Maloney, Little Holiday, John Bizges, Rob Waterhouse, Mo, James Castaneda, Aaron the White, Jordan Longley, Gustav Swan, Marcus Arsner, Rashid Ali, Spinning Three Plates, Filder Oink Oink, David Silverman, Maggie Paxkowski, Spencer Lightfoot, Lexi Schwinn, Kelly Moneymaker, Anthony Beckett, Robert Wetzel, Sky Chappelle, Marvin Cassow, Winston Kaywood, and Izzy? Also, let's be reasonable, it would have fallen apart like 5 minutes after the war was over.